gute Woche. The Rebbe Zilkazon began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today is Yud Beis Nissen. Yud Beis Nissen is the last day of saying a specific Nasi. In other words, what we will say Yud Gimel Nissen, we're already saying not an individual Nasi as we did in the past 12 days. So the last day of the Nesiim is today. So besides it being the last and final days of saying the Nasi, and today is the Nasi of the Shevet of Naftali Achira Beneinon, but it is also the siyum of all of the individual days of the Nasi. And when we come to a soif, when we come to an end of something, we know the klal notes tchilosam b'soifon. The beginning and the end relate. In other words, the beginning is implanted into the end. Or rather, is another expression which we say Friday night in davening, soif maise b'machshava tchila. In other words, when we are up to the soif maise, here we are revealing the very initial point, the very beginning, the machshava tchila. And this concept of soif maise b'machshava tchila is because any inyan which has to come down into maise has to go through the stage of machshava, then it has to go through the stage of dibur, and after going through the stage of dibur, that is when it goes through the stage of maise, and it finally comes down into the stage of maise. However, when maise, the soif maise, reveals the b'machshava tchila, it's at times it can reveal such deeper inyanim that are much deeper than the machshava which we had, which in our eyes we view as the machshava. It gets into much deeper inyanim, much deeper inyanim, and all of this is revealed at the soif maise. For example, the whole inyan of Geula. The whole inyan of Geula is that we are achakaloi bechol yom sheyaveh. We are constantly waiting for Mashiach to come every day. And none of us know when Mashiach will come. Liba lepuma legalia, it's an expression. The heart does not reveal to the mouth. In other words, it's something which we do not know when Geula will be. But nonetheless, we are constantly waiting for it. And what will happen when Geula will come, then as the Rambam writes, when the Rambam describes what it will be like in the days when Mashiach will come, the Rambam uses the expression, we will know dvarim stumin, things that are hidden, or that were hidden until now. What does this mean? That then we will reveal in Yonim, that is also like what we're talking about. It's the same idea. Soif maise b'machshava tchila. The soif maise, in other words, gi'ula, then we will have dvorim stumim, which were initially b'machshava, but much deeper than machshava. And we will have access to that, and everybody will be knowledgeable of all of these dvorim stumim. Bechlal, we see in human nature, the Rebbe continues, when we know that we have something very good waiting for us, but it will take a long time till we get it, then we are usually patient about it, because we know we're not going to have it right away. However, when we're talking about Geula is different, because we are constantly waiting for Geula to come. So being that Mashiach could come, take it from Miyad, immediately, instantly, even in this Shabbos, and in this Shabbos before we will daven Mincha, and during the Farbrengen we can expect the coming of Mashiach. So our preparations also have to be in a way that it should be keheref ayin, instantly we should be ready to greet Mashiach. That is why we have to be in a position, as the expression from the Friedrich Rebbe goes, that the kneplach, the buttons have to be shiny. In other words, everything from beginning to end, just like a soldier in the army, his entire, whatever he's wearing, has to be perfect, to the extent that the buttons have to be shining. So the same way the Friedrich Rebbe is implying the same expression, we have to be ready, even our buttons have to be shiny. We have to be ready completely for the coming of Mashiach. Because this is not something which is at a distance. This is something very great, and at the same time we are expecting it instantly. From finishing the Nesiim, the Yud Beis Nesiim, 12, which is B'gematria Zeh. Zeh is also equal to 12. In other words, we will come to a Gilui, to a revelation that we will be able to see Getlichkeit and point on it. Hine Elokeinu zeh. As the Gemara discusses at the end of Masechtas Tainis, where the Gemara brings out that La'osid Lavei HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make a mochel, a dance l'tzadikim, and everybody will say, Hine zeh Elokeinu. The Rebbe says it's befitting that this should be at the end of Masechtas Tainis. Why? What's the meaning of Etanis? The meaning of Etanis is something undesirable. Here we are talking about the revelation, which will be when Mashiach will come. What the Rebbe is doing, mochel l'tzadikim. This is the end of Masechtas Tainis. In other words, the undesirable part of which Tainis stands for will no longer be in existence. Why? Because by Geula, revelation of Getlichkeit will be at such an extent that all these undesirable inyanim will no longer be there. And from the completion of the Beis Nesiyim, we enter into Bahaloischa. And Bahaloischa also talks, the Rebbe is telling Aaron to kindle the menorah. And kindling the menorah there, two different expressions in the pasuk. There's one expression in the pasuk that it was me'erev ad boiker. Another expression in the pasuk was that the menorah was on tamid. And as Chassidus explains, it's two different levels in Avodah. There's a level of me'erev ad boiker, and there's a level of tamid, which is an expression of permanency and constant. Which primarily, these two inyanim relate to Golus and Geula. Golus is me'erev ad boiker. Erev ad boiker means there are shinuyim, there are differences. There are ups and downs. There's Erev and there's Boiker. There's a time of light and there's a time of darkness. However, when Geula will come, then it will be a madrega of Tamid. Then Getlichkeit will be shining in a permanent way, in a way of Tamid. It is always that way. This also has a shaykhis to the end of, to the kapitel Peites, which we just began saying this Yud Aleph Nissen, where there the pasuk talks about Asher cherfu ikves Mashiachecha, those who have interfered with Mashiach. And then we do have Mashiach, the steps of Mashiach, and then we do have the Geula, and then the pasuk kapitel concludes Baruch Hashem liyolam Amen ve'Amen. And as Chassidus explains what the meaning of Baruch Hata, the meaning of a bracha is always the meaning of a hamshacha. It's a revelation of Getlichkeit, and this revelation is in such a way Amen, not only once Amen but twice Amen ve'Amen. It says the Rebbe, when we find an expression repeated twice, it doesn't just mean that it's double. Kiflayim l'tashiyah. It is much more than that. And where do we get the strength for all this? Strength from all this we get from the beginning of the kapitel. The kapitel begins at the beginning, Maskil le'eson ha'ezrochi. And in Maskil le'eson ha'ezrochi, there are several interpretations. And all of these interpretations correspond and relate one to another. One, that it refers to Avraham Avinu. And therefore we get our strength from this, from Avraham, who Avraham was called Eson. Another taich is that this refers to each and every Yid. The Rebbe writes from the letter, each and every Yid has this inyan of Eson, this inyan of Starkheit. See this taich is what's the inyan of Eson. Eson means a strength, a tremendous power which the Rebbe has given into Yidden. And then there's a third taich, Maskil Eson ha'ezrochi. Ezrach is Melosha, shining. That every Yid will reach to a level, will reach to the madrega of shining, of a lichtigkeit, of being illuminated at a very high madrega. And when will this be? This will be, as the pasuk says, also in this kapitel, Matzosi David Avdi b'shem en kochi mishachtiv. I found David Avdi, and I have anointed him b'shem en kochi, with the holy oil. And when is this referred to? Naturally, this refers to Geula. And from this kapitel, we enter to the next kapitel, which is kapitel Tzadik, which that's also Tefillah LaMoshe. Which Chassidus explains at length what the whole meaning of Tefillah LaMoshe is. And Bechlal, we know that there are 10 expressions regarding Tefillah. And here we're talking about this high madreg of Tefillah LaMoshe. The main thing is that all of these inyanim should come down into reality. We should have it all b'poyel mamish. And when we say b'poyel mamish, just like the Alter Rebbe interprets that a neshama is a chelik alakami mal, which is a pasuk, and the Alter Rebbe adds on the word mamish. What's meant mamish? Mamish means that it's tangible. We can feel it. The same thing that we should be able to feel all of these inyanim, all of these revelations. And we are right now before the 13th of Nisan. 13th of Nisan, that is the Yom HaYilul of the Tzemach Tzedek. There's an expression in the pasuk, Echad be'echad yigoshu. Echad and echad meet. So there's a taich, echad equals 13. 13th of Tishrei and the 13th of Nisan relate one to another. The 13th of Tishrei is the yahrzeit of the Rebbe Maharash, the son. 13th of Tishrei, 13th of Nisan rather, is the yahrzeit of the father, the Tzemach Tzedek. And we say that both of them relate one to another. The Rebbe Maharash, his inyan was, look at Chila Riba. What is the uftu of the Tzemach Tzedek? Tzemach Tzedek, we find an unusual greatness in all parts of Torah, in all areas of Torah. And what do we say? That this approach of the greatness in all areas of Torah is combined with the concept of look at Chila Riba. So look at Chila Riba in all the areas of Torah. And all of this comes down into reality, especially this year that we are in the year of Heit of Shinun. Nisim. And not only that, we are in the month of Nisan, and the month of Nisan also has two nunen, as the Gemara, which the Gemara tells us in the Masechta Brachas, that if somebody sees something in his dream, the word Nisan that has two nunen, he can expect Nisei Nisim. So all of these inyanim should, especially that we're in such a suitable time, all of this should come down into reality, and we should have access to all of these inyanim, especially that we are entering the 13th of Nisan. The 13th of Nisan, as mentioned earlier, we will be saying, we're not saying the Nasi, but we will be saying the part of Pashas Ba'aloischa. Pashas Ba'aloischa is talking about Aaron HaKoyen. And Aaron HaKoyen, there we find that Chazal say that the Rebbe told him, Shalacha G'doila Mishalahem, that when Aaron saw all the great accomplishments which happened when the Nesiim brought their korbanos, Chol Shodai, Aaron felt bad. So Aaron, Rebbe told him, I will give you something to do to kindle the menorah, and what the task you are given is G'doila Mishalahem, is even greater than what they have done. So there's a Taich see this. Shalacha G'doil. Why is what you are doing so great? Mishalahem. You are gaining strength from what they did. In other words, Yidden Bechlal have this great power. And when all of Klal Yisrael brought korbanos, each and every shevet brought a korban, this laid the ground so that later Aaron can reach to a yet greater madrege, to a yet higher madrege by kindling the menorah. But where is he getting the strength to be able to reach to this level? The strength for this he's getting from the Avodah of Bnei Yisrael. And the same we say that it's brought in Chazal that Yidden come before Torah. Yisrael kodmu Torah. But nonetheless, what is the greatness of Yidden? Because they are bound to Torah and they are committed to Torah. So on one hand, we say that Yidden Atake had a preference to Torah. But on the other hand, why did Yidden have this preference to Torah? Because of the fact that Yidden have their commitment to Torah and to mitzvahs. So especially that we're going now from Parshas Tzav. Parshas Tzav talks about the Korban Tamid, which Yidden brought every day. We should be able to be makriv the Korban Tamid, even though the Alter Rebbe explains the Likutei Torah, the greatness of an Ushalma Forum Sfasenu, what we accomplish by davening, by tefillah. The tefillah substitutes korbanos. The tefillah can substitute a korban even if it's said not in the proper time when the korban would be brought. Still davening, tefillah has this koyach. But nonetheless, what we really want is that we should be able to do the korbanos physically. And especially that we are leaving Parshas Tzav, and Tzav is, as Rashi tells us right at the beginning of the Seder, a lotion of zeros. It's a lotion of rushing us, hastening us. So the whole inyan of Korban Tamid should be rushed, that we should be able to be makriv the Korban Tamid and have access to the Beis HaMikdash. All of this by the coming of Mashiach. And from Parshas Tzav today, by Mincha, we began to read Vahi Bayom Hashmini, and it's known what Chassidus, based on Chazal, the greatness of this Yom Hashmini, that Oisei Hayoim Notal Eser HaTorah, that was the day that took 10 crowns, a very, very special day. And the Chassidus teaches that Shmini doesn't only mean the word 8, Shmini is Meloshen Shomein, Meloshen Fetkeit. In other words, the essence of a Yid. This is what was revealed on that day. That was such a special day that the shamein of it, the shamnunis of a Yid, and Chassidus has also brought this word, Loptaich in Yiddish, the essence. Same idea, the essence of a Yid. This is what was revealed on this day. So from such a special day, like Chazal say regarding this day, that is the day when the Rebbe said, Yerotzen shetish, Moshe Rabbeinu I think said, Yerotzen shetish Shechina b'maisi yedechem. May it be the wish of Hashem that the Shechina should dwell in whatever you are doing, because that is what the Yidden have erected, the Mishkan. So the same thing, we should be able to have all of this through the inyan of Gula by having access to the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, the Mikdash of Mikdash Adnai Koinenu Yedecha, this Beis HaMikdash which will be erected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Later in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe brought up a very interesting question. We are talking about the Nesiim. And each one of them was Makriv Korban on his day. When did this happen? This happened a year after Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, Nisan, and a year later, they put up the Mishkan, and that is by the dedication of the Mishkan, every Shevet, Nasi of every Shevet is bringing a korban. We know that a tremendous amount of Gerim went along with Yidden. V'gam Erev Rav Ola Itom, the Erev Rav that went out of Mitzrayim, they went along with Yidden, and they were, Rabbi says, it's brought in Midrashim, that they outnumbered Yidden. There were that many of them that they outnumbered Yidden. So if there were so many of them that were around, and obviously they were also at a certain level in Ruchnias, they weren't only in Mispa greater, but the Rebbe said Mispa relates to the word sapir, to the word shining. They were also at a level of spiritual illumination, they am gesheint. So how is it that they had no involvement whatsoever in the karbanos which were brought for the dedication of the Mishkan? The Rebbe says he's sure that this question is brought in Svarim, it's mentioned, but obviously this is something which should have been mentioned even in a Medrash or such other type of Svarim, and until now he hasn't seen it. Later in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe was strongly Ma'ira, very, very strong, but the responsibility to see to it that every Yid will be able to, every Yid and every family should be able to celebrate Pesach accordingly. And in order for them to be able to celebrate Pesach accordingly, we have to take care of this before Pesach. And make sure that everything is prepared, just like there are halachas in Shulchan Aruch, that everybody's supposed to be happy on Yom Tov. Husband is supposed to be happy. The husband has husband's responsibility to make the wife happy. And as the halacha tells us, how does he make his wife happy? By buying her new dresses and so forth. And also by bringing happiness into the entire family, into the children. And how is all this done? When we do the preparations before Yom Tov. Memela, in order to prepare, that we should be able to have, as we say in the Haggadah, Kol dichfin yeseh v'yechel, Kol ditzrich yeseh v'yifsach, that every dichfin and every ditzrich, anybody who is in need should have what he needs. We really have to prepare all of this before Pesach. That is the inyan of Mois Chitim, to prepare that everything that a Yid needs in the best way possible. Regarding tzedakah, the Gemara says that when we give somebody tzedakah, we're not supposed to make him rich. But we still have to see to it that he has everything until the level of making him rich, and especially according to what the Alter Rebbe says in the Geras HaTshuvah, in the Geras HaKodesh, about the importance of giving tzedakah nowadays. It is definitely our responsibility to see to it that everybody has the means to be able to celebrate Pesach accordingly. And accordingly in a harchavadika way. So here the Rebbe is asking, if so, why is it that when we sit down to the Seder we say, this is something which we are supposed to take care of much before Pesach, and not to wait for the moment when we are sitting down to the Seder. That is when we are inviting people. The Rebbe says this can be explained with a Rambam. The Rambam, in the counting of mitzvahs, counts Mechias Amalek as one of the mitzvahs. When the Rambam gives us rules which mitzvahs are considered one of Taryag mitzvahs, it's only those mitzvahs which we will be able to fulfill them at all times, even when Mashiach will come. So when Mashiach will come, we wouldn't have no Amalek. There wouldn't be an Amalek Begashmias, and hopefully an Amalek Beruchnias will also not be, because what Amalek stands for, Hashakorcha Baderech, cooling off and throwing in sfekas, throwing in doubts, whatever Amalek stands for in Ruchnias will also be wiped out when Mashiach will come. So nonetheless, the Rambam counts the mitzvah of Mechias Amalek as a mitzvah in the Taryag mitzvahs. Rabbi says, why? Because true, but in the event if there will be es soll sich machen, if it will happen, that there will be an Amalekite, it is a mitzvah for us to know that we have to destroy this Amalekite. The same the Rebbe says, our responsibility is to take care of it and make sure that all of this is done before Pesach. To make sure and see that every Yid has the means to be able to celebrate Pesach accordingly. But in the event, if for whatever reason there was an individual person where it was an oversight and it was not taken care of, so to take care of this, to make sure that this is also taken care of, when we sit down to the Seder, we proclaim again, Kol Dichfin Yesev Yechel and Kol Ditzrich Yesev Yifsach. But again, to make sure that all of this is already taken care of before the Yontif. But even when it comes to Yontif, in the event there it may have happened the case which we did not take care of, and especially now that we're already a few days before Pesach, B'chlal, there's an inyan that 30 days before Yontif, we start learning the halachas of Chag and taking care of the needs of Chag. According to Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, it's 15 days before Yontif. Now we have already passed that as well, and we are already today on Shabbos HaGadol. Shabbos HaGadol, we know the custom of Chabad that after Mincha we say a major portion of the Haggadah. So we're already right away getting into Pesach. So we have to make sure to see to it that every Yid will be able to celebrate Pesach accordingly. Here the Rebbe mentioned there's an Eure Chaim HaKadosh in Parshas Tzav, where he teaches on the Pasuk, Eish Tomid Tukad Ala Mizbeach Lo Yisichbe, a constant fire when we're burning on the Mizbeach, and this fire will never be extinguished. So he gets into a lengthy explanation, and he discusses that every 1,000 years of the world relate by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is a day. Yom Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Elef Shalom. So when he was writing in his time, he wrote that after 500 years, in the 1,000 which we are in now, we are in the 6,000. It's already time for Geulah. What does it mean by Tov Kuf? First comes night, then comes day. So when it's 500, that is the point where it goes from night to day. So Memelos, it's already time to go over from night and go into day. In other words, to go from Golus to Geulah. Especially says the Rebbe that we are already further than the times of the Chaim HaKadosh. Now we are already in the year of Tavshin Nun. In other words, we are 3/4 into the 1,000 already. So it's definitely, as the Chaim explains at length, that it's definitely a proper time for Geulah. And the Farbrengen, the Rebbe mentioned that being that Yud Gimel Nisan is the Yahrzeit of the Tzemach Tzedek, and this year is a special year. It's 200 years since the Tzemach Tzedek was born. It's already been publicized, and it's even printed on many cover pages of various publications. So therefore, says the Rebbe, it would be extremely appropriate that this day should be utilized to learn the Torah of the Tzemach Tzedek, whether in Nigla, or in Chassidus, in Kabbalah, or in all areas, and it would be appropriate to make a Kviyas Item B'Torah 3 times during the Meis Leis of Yud Gimel Nisan, 3 times in the Torah of the Tzemach Tzedek. So at the end of the Farbrengen, when the Rebbe called for those that have submitted mashke, they should come up and take the mashke and should announce, and as the Rebbe always says, we should take example from those people who are doing things that because of these things they are giving mashke. So the mashke was 1 bottle of mashke today. It was for an opening for a Chabad house which is taking place this Monday morning, 8 o'clock in Wisconsin. So the Rebbe asked the person who made the announcement if it's going to be a chametzdike celebration. So he said yes. So I told him to announce it, to say so, that it will be a chametzdike celebration. And then the Rebbe said an interesting thing. He said that Bechlal by Korbanis we did not bring chametz. However, there was a korban which was an exception, and that is the korban toida. When we give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then we bring chametz. What's the idea of participating chametz into a korban? Chametz shows on the maila of iskafia and ishapche. Let's explain the chassidus at length. What's the difference between matzah and chametz?
Chometz stands for evil, and matzah stands for the good. What do we accomplish by a korban when we give to the Rebishter a korban toida? And this is the korban which we will give to the Rebishter when Mashiach will come as well. Then we will thank the Rebishter. That means we will be able to come to a level where that's the idea and expression of a korban toida. We come to a level where we convert iskafia first, and then ishapcha, we are mahapach, we are turning over whatever was no good, and now it is becoming good, it is becoming part of a korban. A gute Woche, und a kosher Pesach.